I woke up to the smell of disinfectant and copper. That was the first thing. Not the pain in my rib cage, not the low hum of the station's filtration system cycling through another round of recycled air. The smell, sharp and metallic, like someone had scrubbed the floor with chemicals and then bled on it. My eyes wouldn't open right away. They felt sealed, like someone had taped them shut. I tried to move my left arm and got nothing. Just this dull, faraway ache that told me something was very wrong, but my body wasn't ready to explain the details yet. Then I heard breathing. Not mine. Mine was shallow, ragged, barely there. This was slow, controlled, the kind of breathing you do when you're trying not to be noticed. Someone was sitting next to my bed. I forced my right eye open. Just a crack. The room was dim. Blue emergency lighting along the baseboards cast everything in this cold underwater glow. Medical monitors blinked on the wall, heart rate, blood oxygen, neural response, all the standard stuff you'd expect in a union recovery ward. The ceiling was low, ribbed with exposed conduit. Not a proper hospital, more like a field station, something bolted together in a hurry. And there she was, sitting in a chair about 2 feet from my bed, legs crossed, hands folded in her lap, completely still. She wasn't reading a chart. She wasn't checking instruments. She wasn't doing anything a nurse is supposed to do in the middle of the night. She was just watching me. Her eyes caught the blue light and reflected it back, not like a normal reflection. More like the way a predator's eyes flash in the dark when you sweep a torch across a field, and something stares back at you from the tall grass. I closed my eye. My heart did something stupid in my chest, and the monitor betrayed me with a quick series of beeps. I heard her shift in the chair, just slightly, the faintest creak of synthetic leather. Then nothing. She didn't move again, she didn't speak, she just went back to watching. And that was my first night on Korath Station. I should back up. My name is Declan Marsh, Corporal, 3rd Expeditionary, Union Ground Forces, 29 years old, born on a cargo hauler between Titan and Europa, raised on Morrow Colony after my mother got reassigned to the Outer Ring dockyards. I'm telling you this because it matters later. Where you come from shapes how you survive, and people who grow up on colony ships learn one thing faster than everyone else. You learn to read a room. You learn to notice when someone's standing too close in a narrow corridor. You learn to feel when the air pressure changes before the alarms go off. You learn to trust your gut, because out there, between the black and the hull, your gut is the only thing that's faster than the vacuum. And my gut was telling me something was wrong with this nurse. I'd been brought to Korath Station 3 days earlier. At least that's what they told me. I didn't remember the transport. The last thing I remembered clearly was the ambush on Felder's Ridge, a stretch of volcanic rock on Korath Prime, where my unit had been running perimeter checks for a forward operating base. The Thessari hit us at dusk. If you haven't served on the frontier, you might not know the Thessari. Big, armored, 6-limbed insectoids with a hive structure that made them terrifyingly coordinated in combat. They didn't fight like individuals. They fought like a single organism with 100 bodies, and when they swarmed, it was like watching the ground itself come alive and rush at you. We'd been told the sector was clear. Intelligence had mapped their nest clusters 40 clicks east. We were supposed to have a 2-day buffer before they pushed into our grid. Intelligence was wrong. They came through a lava tube network nobody had surveyed, burst through the ground about 80 meters from our position, 12 of them, then 20. Then I stopped counting because I was too busy trying not to die. The details are fuzzy after that. I remember firing. I remember Corporal Webb going down beside me, his left leg sheared clean off at the knee by a Thessari mandible. I remember grabbing him by the webbing on his vest and dragging him behind a rock shelf. I remember the concussion blast that picked me up and threw me into something very hard and very unforgiving. Then dark. then disinfectant and copper. Then her. The first full day, I was in and out. The station's medical officer, a squat, gravel-voiced pallid named Dr. Jarrow, came by twice to check my vitals and explain what had happened. 3 fractured ribs, he said, scrolling through my chart on a floating hollow tablet. Collapsed left lung, which we've reinflated. Severe concussion. Hairline fracture in your left ulna. Multiple lacerations. You also had a piece of volcanic glass lodged in your trapezius, which was fun to remove. He said fun, the way doctors say fun when they mean the opposite. Webb, I managed. Your colleague is in the next ward. Stable. He'll keep the leg, what's left of it. The prosthetic team will handle the rest once transport arrives. That was something, at least. How long until I'm cleared? Dr. Jarrow looked at me over the tablet. Pallids have these wide-set, milky eyes that don't blink much, which makes their stares feel about twice as long as they actually are. You're not cleared until I say you're cleared, Corporal, and right now, you're staying in that bed for a minimum of 6 standard days. Your body took a significant beating, even by human standards, and your species has an absurd tolerance for physical damage. He said it like a compliment. Most aliens did when they talked about humans. They'd shake their heads or wave their tentacles or click their mandibles, whatever their version of disbelief looked like, and say something about how humans were either incredibly resilient or incredibly stupid. Usually both. The night shift nurse will monitor you through the quiet hours, Dr. Jarrow continued. Her name is Marin, she's Noctari. She's very competent, don't give her trouble. He left before I could ask what Noctari meant. The station had maybe 40 beds across 3 wards. Most of them were occupied. The war on Korath Prime had been grinding for months, and casualties flowed in steady. Not always human. There were pallid soldiers, a couple of Vren engineers who'd been caught in a structural collapse, and one massive Gorath fighter named Torek who'd somehow taken a Thessari acid spray to the chest and survived. Torek was in the bed across from mine. He had this deep, rumbling voice that made the water cup on my side table vibrate when he talked. You're the one they pulled off the ridge, he said, on my second afternoon. Yeah. They said you dragged another soldier out while the swarm was still active. I dragged him about 15 feet and then got blown into a cliff. Not exactly heroic. Torek made a sound in his throat. Among the Gorath, it was their version of a laugh. 15 feet under a Thessari swarm is 15 feet more than most species would manage. Your kind is strange, human. We hear that a lot. You'll hear it more. He shifted in his bed. The frame groaned under him. Have you met the night nurse yet? The question landed differently than the others. There was a weight to it, a carefulness. Briefly, I said, I wasn't exactly conscious. The Noctari. Dr. Jarrow mentioned the name. I don't know the species. Torek was quiet for a moment. His yellow eyes moved to the doorway, then back to me. You've heard of the old stories. Every civilization has them. Beings that move in darkness, that feed on the living, that are beautiful and terrible at the same time. Vampires, I said. The word came out flat, ordinary, like I was naming a type of cloud. Torek's expression didn't change. Every species has their own name for it. The Pallids call them the Hollow Ones. The Vren call them Night Drinkers. We Gorath say Bloodthorn. But the concept is the same. A predator that looks like you but isn't. That feeds on you and you don't even mind because something in their presence makes you want to be fed on. And the Noctari are real. The Noctari are very real, human. There are maybe 6,000 of them left in the known galaxy. They're not aggressive. They serve in medical and scientific roles mostly. The Union tolerates them because they're useful. Brilliant healers. Their senses can detect infections, blood abnormalities, even cancerous growths before a scanner picks them up. But they are what they are. And at night, when the lights go down and the wards go quiet, they are more of what they are. I looked at him. This 7-foot wall of scaled muscle and bone, a warrior who'd survived acid to the chest, and he was choosing his words like a man walking through a minefield. Are you telling me to be careful? I'm telling you to pay attention. The Noctari don't harm patients. It's against their code, but they watch. Especially the humans. They always watch the humans. He didn't explain why. And I didn't ask. Because somewhere in the back of my skull, behind the concussion fog and the painkiller haze, I already knew the answer wouldn't be simple. That night I stayed awake. Not completely. The medications made full consciousness impossible, but I drifted in a shallow orbit, aware enough to register sounds, movements, the rhythm of the ward settling into its nighttime pattern. The overhead lights dimmed at 2100 hours. The blue strips along the floor brightened slightly, casting their cold aquatic glow. The other patients' monitors formed a kind of quiet orchestra, different rhythms, different pitches, all blending into a mechanical lullaby. She came in at 21:30. I heard her before I saw her. Or rather, I didn't hear her, I heard the absence of sound where footsteps should have been. The ward floor was industrial composite, hard. Every other nurse, every doctor, every orderly who walked through produced a clear cadence of steps, boot heels, soft-soled shoes, the heavy thud of Goreth feet. Marin moved like smoke. I kept my eyes mostly closed, watched through my lashes. She went to each bed, checking monitors, adjusting fluid lines, scanning vitals with a handheld unit that emitted a soft amber pulse. Professional, efficient, nothing unusual. Until she got to me. She stood at the foot of my bed for a long time, longer than she'd stood at anyone else's. The amber scanner stayed in her hand, but she didn't raise it. She just stood there. Then she sat down. Same chair, same position, same folded hands, same stillness that didn't look like rest, it looked like vigilance. Like a hawk on a wire, motionless not because it was calm, but because it was concentrating. Now I could see her properly in the blue light. She was tall, taller than most human women, maybe 5'11", with a lean build that suggested muscle underneath the regulation medical scrubs. Her skin was pale, not sickly pale, not the kind of pale you get from staying indoors. This was something else. It had a faint luminescence to it, like moonlight trapped under glass. Her hair was dark, almost black, pulled back in a practical knot at the base of her skull. High cheekbones, a sharp jaw. Features that looked like they'd been carved, rather than grown. And the eyes. God, the eyes. They were gray. Not storm cloud gray or steel gray or any of the normal shades. They were the gray of deep ice, the kind you see in glacial caves, where the light filters through so much compressed ice that it comes out looking like liquid silver. Those eyes were locked on me with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable. But underneath the discomfort, there was something else, something my body responded to before my brain could parse it. A warmth. A pull, a feeling like standing on the edge of a cliff and wanting to lean forward, not because you want to fall, but because something down there is calling your name and you need to hear what it's saying. Torek's words echoed. Something in their presence makes you want to be fed on. I kept my breathing steady, kept my heart rate slow. The monitor beside me continued its calm, rhythmic beeping. Marin tilted her head, just slightly, like a dog catching a far-off sound. Then she spoke. "You're awake, Corporal Marsh." Her voice was low, smoother than I expected. It had this resonance to it, like someone speaking inside a cathedral where every word picks up a faint echo. I opened my eyes fully, no point pretending. "Yeah," I said, "I'm awake." "You should be sleeping. Your body needs recovery time." Hard to sleep when someone's sitting 2 feet away staring at you. A pause. In the blue light something shifted in her expression, not quite a smile. More like the ghost of one, the kind that passes across a face and leaves before you can be sure it was ever there. I apologize. It's part of my monitoring protocol. Noctari nurses observe through multiple sensory channels. Visual proximity enhances the accuracy of my readings. You can read my vitals by looking at me. I can detect your heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, and hormonal balance through scent, thermal variation, and bioelectric resonance. At close range, I can identify individual blood cell counts and flag anomalies faster than a standard med scanner. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was reading ingredients off a package. That's intense. It's biology. Every species has its tools. Most species' tools don't involve sitting in the dark watching people. Another pause, longer this time, her fingers interlaced tighter in her lap. You're uncomfortable. I can adjust my distance. I didn't say I was uncomfortable. Your cortisol levels say otherwise. I almost laughed. Almost. But the ribs reminded me that laughing was currently filed under things that will make you wish you were dead, so I settled for a crooked grin. Fair enough, you can stay. Just maybe next time start with hello. Marin looked at me for another moment. Then she stood, checked the readings on my wall monitor with a practiced glance, and adjusted the flow rate on my intravenous pain management line. Hello, Corporal Marsh. My name is Marin. I'll be watching over you tonight. Declan. What? My name, it's Declan. Corporal Marsh makes me feel like I'm in a debrief. She considered this. Declan, she repeated, and the way she said it, slow, careful, like she was tasting the syllables, made something in my chest tighten that had nothing to do with fractured ribs. Good night, Declan, sleep. She sat back down, folded her hands. This time, I closed my eyes and let the drugs do their work. But just before I slipped under, I could have sworn I heard her whisper something. A single word, too quiet for human ears to catch properly. Something that sounded like it might have been finally. Day 3. The pain was getting more manageable. My lung was holding. Dr. Jarrow expressed what I think was satisfaction. Though with pallets it's hard to tell because their faces have about as much emotional range as a dinner plate. You're healing faster than projected, he said during his morning rounds. Your blood work is remarkably clean. No infection markers. No inflammatory cascade. This is unusual even for humans. Good genes, I said. He made a note on his tablet. The Noctari nurse flagged several readings last night that I want to follow up on. She says your cellular regeneration rate is accelerating beyond baseline parameters. Is that bad? It's not bad. It's interesting. Noctari assessments are extraordinarily precise. If Marin says your cells are regenerating faster, then your cells are regenerating faster. I just want to understand why. He moved on. I lay there thinking about what Torek had said. They always watch the humans. That afternoon, Webb got transferred to a different ward. His stump was healing well, and the prosthetic engineers had arrived from one of the orbital platforms to begin fitting him. He stopped by my section on his way out, leaning heavily on a crutch, his face thinner than I remembered but his eyes still sharp. Heard you pulled me out, he said. Heard you lost a leg. Touch, we'll call it even. He glanced around the ward, lowered his voice. You got the night nurse, the quiet one. Marin. Yeah, the guys in Ward 2 were talking about her. Said she spent the entire shift just sitting by your bed. Didn't move. Didn't blink. One of them said he woke up at 0300 to use the latrine, and she was still in the exact same position. Like a statue. She's Noctari. It's how they monitor. It's creepy is what it is. Webb looked at me sideways. You're not bothered. I thought about her voice in the dark, the way she'd said my name, the way the blue light had played across those silver eyes. I'll manage, I said. Webb shook his head and limped away. Frontier makes everybody weird, he muttered. Night 3. This time, I didn't pretend to be asleep. Marin came in at her usual time, did her rounds, checked each patient, and then she came to me and found me sitting up well, propped up, which was the best I could do with the overhead reading light turned on. She paused at the foot of the bed. "You should be resting." "I've been resting for 3 days. I'm going to lose my mind. Sit down, talk to me." It wasn't a smooth move. It wasn't calculated. I was genuinely going stir-crazy in that bed, and the only thing more boring than staring at a dark ceiling was staring at a dark ceiling while someone stared at you. Marin hesitated. I could see the conflict, the professional protocol warring with something else, something I couldn't name yet. She sat down. "What do you want to talk about?" she asked. "Tell me about the Noctari." The silence that followed was different from her usual silences. This one had texture, weight, like I'd asked her to open a door she'd been keeping locked. "What do you know already?" she said. "Torek called you Bloodthorn." "Torek is Goreth." They enjoy dramatic language. "Is it inaccurate?" Marin's jaw tightened, just fractionally. "It's reductive, like calling humans meat that learn to talk." "That's pretty accurate, honestly." The ghost smile again, there and gone. The Noctari are an ancient species. We predate most civilizations in the Union by several thousand years. Our homeworld, Varenthos, orbits a dim red star in the Selim sector. Low light, long nights. Our biology adapted accordingly. "You drink blood." She didn't flinch. "We require hematic compounds that our bodies cannot synthesize independently. In our early history, yes, this involved direct consumption. Now we have synthetic substitutes. Engineered hemosolutions that provide the necessary proteins, enzymes, and cellular material. But the natural version is better. The natural version is different. She stopped, searched for the word. It's more complete. Synthetic substitutes sustain us. Natural blood nourishes us. There's a distinction. Like the difference between ration bars and a real meal. She looked at me with something close to surprise. "Yes, exactly like that." "So you don't actually bite people?" "We haven't engaged in direct feeding in over 4 centuries. It's prohibited by both Noctari law and Union medical ethics. We serve as healers precisely because we understand blood better than any other species in the galaxy. Our curse became our craft." She said curse without bitterness. Without drama, just a fact, like gravity or entropy. "How old are you?" I asked. "That's a complicated question for a Noctari." "Try me." She paused. "I was born 147 standard years ago." I let that settle. "You don't look a day over 30. We age slowly. A Noctari lifespan under optimal conditions can extend to 900 years. 900. Some of the Elder Council have surpassed 1,000, but those are rare cases. And you chose to spend your centuries working in a field hospital on a frontier war zone." Marin's eyes met mine. In the blue light they looked like liquid mercury. "I chose to be where I was needed. The frontier is where the wounded are. And humans." She stopped. "Humans what?" "Humans sustain more injuries per capita than any other Union species. You throw yourselves into danger with an enthusiasm that most galactic civilizations find genuinely incomprehensible. Someone needs to put you back together. So you're here because we're clumsy." "I'm here because you're brave. There's a difference." She said it quietly, almost to herself, and for the first time I saw something in her expression that didn't look clinical or professional or carefully controlled. It looked like admiration. And maybe something more. Days 4 and 5 blurred together. The ward settled into a rhythm. Morning rounds with Dr. Jarrow. Physical therapy sessions with a Vren technician named Oles who had surprisingly gentle hands for someone with 4 arms. Afternoon stretches, where I tried to rebuild the muscles that 3 days of bed rest had already started to atrophy. And nights with Marin. We talked, not about the war usually, not about injuries or treatment plans. We talked about other things, normal things, the kind of conversations you have when two people are stuck in a quiet room with nothing but time and the hum of machines. She told me about Varenthos, about the crystal forests that grew in total darkness, their structures forming over millennia from mineral-rich underground rivers that seep to the surface, about the cities carved into cliff faces, lit by bioluminescent organisms that the Noctari had cultivated for thousands of years, about the festivals of twilight, when their dim sun would dip just below the horizon and the entire sky would turn a deep, burning violet that lasted for hours. I told her about Morrow Colony, about the artificial sunrises that never quite looked right because the spectrum was slightly off, too yellow, not enough red. About my mother, who'd spent 30 years welding hull plates on cargo ships and had hands like sandpaper and a laugh that could fill a hangar bay. About the first time I saw a real sky, on Earth, during basic training. How I'd stood outside the barracks at night and cried because I'd never understood what stars were supposed to look like until that moment. She listened the way no one else ever had, not just quietly but completely. Like every word I said was being absorbed, cataloged, held. Like she was building a model of me inside her head, and each detail was a piece she needed. It should have been unsettling. It was a little, but it was also something else, something I hadn't felt since before deployment. Being seen, not glanced at, not assessed, seen. On the 5th night, I asked her the question I'd been circling. Why do you watch me differently than the others? Marin was quiet for a long time, long enough that I thought she wasn't going to answer. I don't know what you mean, she said finally. Yeah, you do, Torek noticed. Webb noticed. You spend your entire shift next to my bed. You barely check the other patients. You said your sensory readings are more precise at close range, fine. But you're close to me and nobody else. Why? Her hands were in her lap again. I watched her fingers, the way they pressed against each other. The nails were short, practical, no polish, but the tendons beneath her pale skin stood out like cables under tension. It's medical, she said. Marin, your physiology presents unique monitoring requirements. Marin. She stopped, looked at me, and for just a second the mask slipped. Behind the composure, behind the professionalism, behind 147 years of practiced self-control, I saw something raw, something almost desperate. I can't explain it yet, she whispered. Not tonight. Ask me again in the morning. Why morning? Because by morning, I'll have the test results. And then you'll understand. She stood up, walked to my monitor, made an adjustment that was probably unnecessary. Then she sat down again, and for the rest of the night she didn't say another word. But she didn't look away either. Not once. Morning came slowly on Korath Station. The lights shifted gradually from blue to white over a 30-minute cycle, simulating a dawn that the station's location, buried in the rock of Korath Prime's northern hemisphere, would never naturally see. I woke to find Dr. Jarrow standing at the foot of my bed, his tablet in one hand, his other hand pressed flat against his forehead in what I'd learned was the pallid gesture of deep confusion. Marin stood beside him. She looked different in the white light. The luminescence of her skin was less noticeable, but the sharpness of her features was more pronounced. She looked tired. Not physically tired, Noctari didn't fatigue the way other species did, but something internal, something worn. Corporal Marsh, Dr. Jarrow began. Declan, I said automatically. Declan, I need to discuss your blood work. Okay. Your cellular regeneration rate has increased by 43% since admission. Your white blood cell count is twice normal parameters. Your hemoglobin density is, frankly, It's unlike anything in our database. And Marin has identified a compound in your bloodstream that we cannot classify. I looked at Marin. She was staring at the floor. What kind of compound? Dr. Jarrow glanced at her. I'll let Nurse Marin explain. She identified it. She's better equipped to contextualize it. He left, just like that, set down the conversational grenade and walked away. The ward was waking up around us, monitors adjusting to daytime parameters, other patients stirring, the Vren in the corner coughing, Torek's bed creaking as he rolled over. Marin pulled the chair closer to my bed, sat down, clasped her hands, unclasped them, clasped them again. I'd never seen her nervous before. Declan, I'm here. What I'm about to tell you, it's going to sound impossible, and I need you to understand that I've verified it 3 times. I ran the tests myself. I used 2 different methodologies. The results are consistent. Okay, you're scaring me a little. She took a breath. Noctari didn't need to breathe as often as humans did. Their respiratory requirements were minimal, so when she took a breath, it was deliberate, a human gesture she'd adopted, a way of steadying herself. The Noctari are dying, she said. Whatever I'd expected, it wasn't that. Our species has been in decline for 600 years. Our birth rate has dropped to near zero. Our elders are weakening. The synthetic hemo solutions that have sustained us, they're not enough anymore. They never were, really. They kept us alive, but they didn't keep us whole. We've been slowly starving for centuries. She said it the way you talk about a terminal diagnosis you've had time to accept. Not angry, not panicked, just tired. I'm sorry, I said, because what else do you say? For the last 200 years, Noctari scientists have been searching for a compatible natural blood source, something that could provide the full spectrum of compounds we need, not just proteins and enzymes, but the living cellular architecture, the electrical charge, we call it resonance, the unique bioelectric signature that organic blood carries and synthetic blood doesn't. She paused, looked at her hands. They tested thousands of species. Pallid blood is too alkaline. Gorath blood is saturated with heavy metals that are toxic to us. Vren blood lacks the necessary iron binding. Every species in the Union was sampled, analyzed, cataloged, and rejected. Every one. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not fear exactly, something older, something instinctive. Until humans, I said. Marin looked up. Those silver eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time I saw moisture in them. Not tears, I didn't know if Noctari could cry, but something glistening, something that hurt. The first human blood sample was analyzed 62 years ago. It was collected from a wounded Marine on Callisto Station. A routine sample, taken for standard medical processing. A Noctari lab technician was on duty and noticed something unusual in the spectral analysis. She stood up, walked to the window, a small porthole that looked out onto nothing but rock and the faint glow of the station's exterior lighting. Human blood is unique in the galaxy. Your hemoglobin structure, your iron-oxygen binding, your cellular regeneration markers, they're unlike anything else we've encountered. And the bioelectric resonance of human blood is a near-perfect match for Noctari physiology. Not approximate, not close, perfect. She turned back to me. Your blood can save my species, Declan, not synthetic copies, not engineered analogs, the real thing. Living human blood in its natural state contains every compound the Noctari need to survive, to thrive, to have children again. The ward was fully lit now, bright white, normal. The sounds of a medical station waking up, footsteps, quiet conversations, the clatter of equipment being prepped filled the space around us. But between us, in the 2 feet of air between her chair and my bed, everything was very, very still. Is that why you watch me? I asked. No, she said it fast, too fast. Then she caught herself. Yes, Partly. When human patients are admitted, I'm assigned to monitor them. It's standard protocol for Noctari medical staff. We assess the blood profile, catalog it, and transmit the data back to Varenthos for the research archive. You're cataloging me. I was cataloging you on your first night. That was the assignment. Run the scans, log the data, submit the report. And now, she sat down again, closer than before, close enough that I could see the pulse point in her throat, or where a pulse point would be on a human. On Marin it was still, perfectly, impossibly still. Your blood is different, Declan, not just compatible, different. I've screened over 300 human patients in my career. Everyone showed strong compatibility markers. But yours, your resonance signature, it's not just a match, it's an amplifier. Your blood doesn't just sustain Noctari biology. It enhances it, accelerates it. I've never seen readings like yours. Nobody has. What does that mean? It means that being near you, just being in proximity, my sensory acuity has sharpened. My reflexes have quickened. The chronic fatigue that every Noctari my age carries, it's diminishing. Not from feeding, not from any direct contact, just from sitting in this chair, breathing the same air, existing in your bioelectric field. She was shaking, barely. A tremor so faint that most people wouldn't notice. But I'd grown up reading rooms, reading bodies, reading the space between what people say and what they mean. Marin was terrified. I should have reported it immediately, she said. Your readings, the anomalous data, I should have flagged it on the first night and requested a full Noctari medical panel. That's protocol. That's what I'm trained to do. But you didn't. I didn't. Why? She looked at me, and the mask was gone, completely gone. What was left underneath was older than 147 years. It was the face of someone who'd been walking in the dark for a very long time and had suddenly, unexpectedly, stumbled into light. Because I was afraid of what they'd do with you. The words hung in the air between us, heavy, real, dangerous. If Varenthos learns what your blood can do, if the Elder Council sees these readings, you won't be a patient anymore, Declan. You won't be a soldier. You'll be a resource. The most valuable biological resource the Noctari have ever discovered. And my people are desperate enough to do desperate things. You're saying they'd take me. I'm saying they'd never let you go. I stared at her, at this woman, this being, who'd spent 3 nights sitting in the dark beside me, monitoring my blood, breathing my air, feeling her dying body come alive in the warmth of my proximity, who'd buried the data, who'd broken protocol, who'd risked everything because she was afraid for me. Not afraid of me, for me. Marin. I know what I've done. I know what this means. I've compromised my duty, my oath, my... Marin. She stopped. Thank you. The word hit her like a physical force. I saw it land, saw her flinch, saw her eyes go wide, the silver irises expanding until they almost swallowed the pupils. You're thanking me. You could have turned me in, flagged the report, made yourself a hero back on Varenthos. Instead, you sat in a chair for 3 nights and said nothing because you were worried about what would happen to me. Yeah, I'm thanking you. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You don't understand, she whispered. Being near you, it's not just medical data and resonance signatures. It's I can feel your heartbeat without touching you. I can taste the iron in your breath. When you sleep, your body radiates a warmth that, Declan, I haven't felt warm in 90 years. She said it like a confession, like a sin. And maybe it was. Maybe in her world, wanting to feel warm was the most dangerous thing a Noctari could admit. What happens now? I asked. Marin folded her hands, unfolded them, stood up, sat down. She was coming apart at the seams, this ancient, beautiful, terrifying creature, and she was doing it in a plastic chair in a field hospital under fluorescent lights with the Gorath across the hall snoring like a broken engine. I don't know, she said. I've bought us time. The data is stored locally, it hasn't been transmitted. But Dr. Jarrow has seen the anomalous readings. He'll ask questions. He'll want explanations. Can you trust him? He's pallid. They're methodical, not political. He'll want to study the data, not weaponize it. But eventually, it will reach someone who thinks differently. Then we deal with it. She looked at me. We. Yeah, we. You sat by my bed for 3 nights making sure nobody turned me into a blood bank. The least I can do is include you in the pronoun. That ghost smile again, but this time it stayed longer. This time it almost looked real. You're very strange, Declan Marsh. I'm human, it's kind of our thing. She laughed. It was quiet, brief, more air than sound. But it was the first time I'd heard her laugh, and it sounded like something that had been locked away for a very long time, finally finding its way out. Outside the porthole, the station's exterior lights caught the edge of a rock formation and turned it amber. Not quite sunrise, but close enough. Marin turned to the window. The light touched her face, and for a moment she didn't look like a vampire or a nurse or a 147-year-old alien carrying the weight of a dying civilization. She looked like someone who just realized they weren't alone. I need to finish my shift, she said softly. Dr. Jarrow will want to discuss the results at rounds. What are you going to tell him? The truth, partial truth. Enough to satisfy his curiosity, without triggering a full Noctari referral. And tonight. She looked at me. Tonight I'll be here, same chair, same time. Good. Declan. Yeah. When I said your blood was different, that it was more than just compatible, I need you to understand something. In Noctari culture, when a blood resonance is this strong between 2 individuals, it has a name. It's not a medical term. It's older than that. Older than our science, older than our civilization. What's it called? She held my gaze, those silver eyes steady now, no longer shaking, no longer afraid. In your language, the closest translation would be anchor, a living tether between 2 beings whose biologies recognize each other at a level deeper than chemistry, deeper than genetics. It means that my body doesn't just respond to your blood, it responds to you, specifically, uniquely. In all my years, across every patient I've ever treated, I've never felt anything like this, and it's supposed to be impossible. She stood up, straightened her scrubs, pulled the mask of professionalism back into place, layer by layer, like armoring herself for the daylight. It's supposed to be a myth, she said, something from the old texts. The elders said it was metaphor. But it's not. No, she walked toward the doorway, paused, didn't turn around. It's not a metaphor, Declan, and that's what scares me more than anything else. She left. The ward filled with morning sounds, footsteps and voices, and the mundane machinery of healing. Torek woke up across the hall and groaned. A Vren technician dropped a tray somewhere and swore in 3 languages. And I sat in my bed, bandaged and broken and healing faster than any human should, staring at an empty chair and an amber-lit window, trying to wrap my head around the fact that somewhere in this galaxy, my blood was singing a song that only one person could hear. And she'd been listening all night.